Live only on DAZN. He silenced Britain's best. Usyk, the Brit breaker, but now the dynamite is ready to explode. One night, one shot at Undisputed. Usyk versus Dubois 2. July 19th. Right now at DAZN.com/boxing.
So the press conference there today for Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. Not a crazy amount to discuss, not a crazy amount to talk about. There was some moments of it that were, I don't know, for me just came across as funny. There was some moments where I just kind of looked, I'll give you the, right, Dubois he's an interviewer's nightmare. All right, there are some people who, for interviews, they can just do it. Daniel Dubois is a man of few words. It's as simple as that. That's just the way he is, right? So when he was asked questions, it was just, I'm going to win, this, that, and the other. It was interesting listening to Frank Warren and Igis Klimas talk. Right, that was an interesting one because, right, it was Igis Klimas, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was. It was one thing it was weird not seeing Alex Krasuk there. That was weird because you're just so used to seeing Krasuk there with Oleksandr Usyk the whole time. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to, that one. But the good long and the short of it, Frank was speaking about Daniel Dubois being in his prime, being in the prime of his career, or if not just coming into it. And normally 27, you would think that they would be peak-ish years for a heavyweight, maybe 28, 29 there and thereabouts, 30. But Frank was talking about that when it went to Igis Klimas. He basically said, it's been 2 years, it's the same Daniel Dubois that we fought in Poland, words to that effect. And that basically mentally Dubois hasn't changed. Now, I tend to concur with Frank Warren when he refuted that. I do tend to concur with Frank Warren on that. I think Dubois has changed mentally. I think he is more mentally switched on. It does help that his dad was there. His dad isn't there. And of course, Don Charles, in his way, had to refute a part of it because Don Charles said, well, Daniel Dubois' father is not with us. And then he had to point out that he's not dead. He's just not here today, which I was like, yep, there you go. But Daniel Dubois, I think, has changed mentally. He definitely has. He definitely seems a lot more switched on. I think having his dad there has certainly helped. I think there was moments against Jarrell Miller where he didn't look like he wanted out. No, but I think he went through moments there where he felt, oh, what do I do here? It's getting tough. He came through it. Against Filip Hrgović, likewise, he came through it. And Frank Warren was really bigging those performances up. You know, making it, and look, they're good wins, don't get me wrong. But I guess if you want to look at it in context, you could say, well, Jarrell Miller was a serial cheat, which he was, serial performance enhancing cheat. How good was he? He was damn near 350 pounds, and he ran out of gas in a 10-rounder. With Filip Hrgović, he fought a stupid fight. He was overconfident. He threw way too many punches too early, left nothing in the gas tank, and emptied the tank. Simple as, fought like a bully, fought a stupid fight, quite frankly. And if he hadn't have done that, who's to say what would have happened? And then Anthony Joshua, fair to say he's over the hill. So seriously, you want to talk about context, you could put them all in context. You look at Usyk, I don't think he beat at his best Tyson Fury in either fight. And he beat Daniel Dubois, who was 25 years old. Well, that's not to say he was young, you know, 25 years old is 25 years old. It's a reasonable age, especially when he turned pro young in his teens. So you could look at those past performances and say, okay, we can nitpick them if we really want to. But I think Dubois has improved mentally enough to be able to weather a storm from Oleksandr Usyk. He did say Frank did, that Dubois will meet Oleksandr Usyk in the middle of the ring because that's where Oleksandr Usyk wants to go and that's what he wants to take, and Dubois will meet him there. And that's going to be interesting to see if he can do that. When it went to Dubois, again, not really much to be said. It went to Don Charles. He was a lot more, I want to say respectful this time. He didn't bring up Usyk, you know, how can you call yourself a Christian, a man of faith, this, that and the other. He was speaking about, you know, that this has all come full circle. He's a man who believes in destiny, he believes in fate, and, you know, he believes that he inherited Daniel Dubois to be able to do this, essentially. He did, what was it he said to Oleksandr Usyk? Did he say something to Usyk, or like, you got something to say? And Usyk was like, something like, don't push the horse or something like that. Is a weird kind of, I would interpret that to mean don't poke the bear. But, and Don Charles, I should laugh. It's just funny. It's just funny with Don Charles. I think Don Charles is low key hilarious. I really do. I mean, Dubois sometimes, to me, when he says like the big baby, but when I listen to Don Charles, sometimes I just can't help but giggle. I just think he's just low key hilarious, especially when it comes to Oleksandr Usyk with the lack of English and the way Usyk pronounces certain words. Don Charles is almost insulted, you know. I mean, I go back to the, you know, what God do you pray to? What God do you believe in? My God, Jesus. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of what? No, Jesus. I'm jealous of Jesus. It's just, honestly, that was just, Don Charles is low-key hilarious. So that was kind of interesting from Don Charles from that point of view. I went to Daniel Dubois' manager then, and, you know, he spoke about Daniel being a changed guy, you know, this, that, and the other. And it was interesting. It went back to Team Usyk, and Daniel Dubois' manager made a point to, you know, kind of say, well, hang on, come back to me, because you keep making a point that Daniel isn't the same mentally. Well, I think you're rattled. I think the best thing you could have done was keep your mouth shut. Because, again, this is just me from the outside looking in, but, like, I interpret that to mean you're on the defense. The way you did it, the way you emphasize, no, come to me and I'm going to make this statement, I'm going to make this point. It's like, did you really need to do that? Really? Because now you're making it seem as though you're on the defense. It's like if someone says, you know, oh, what did you do, Dad? Oh, I didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. It's because it's like, no, calm it down, relax your cax. You know, so I kind of looked at that and thought, it was interesting. Oleksandr Usyk, they asked about his age. He said 38 is young, which 38 is certainly not old. Certainly not. He's not a young man in his 20s, but you know, plenty of people do good work at 38. You know, I used to work with a guy who was 38 years old. He had his first kid at 38 years, a couple of years ago now. And my guy was running marathons left, right, and centre at 38. So, you know, plenty of people do a lot of... 38 is still reasonably quite good by today's standards anyway, in the world we live in today anyway. You still can be fresh. But in terms of boxing, there is a lot of questions there. That was really the end of it. The face-off, there was nothing really much to say. Dubois looked away first, but I wouldn't read anything into that. It's going to be interesting to see what they weigh in tomorrow. That's really going to be the interesting one. What both guys weigh in tomorrow. In terms of a face-off press conference, it wasn't a particularly long one from DAZN and Queensbury. It was we got what we kind of were expecting, so to speak. I know Deb Sani mentioned Canelo Alvarez putting a 500 grand bet on Oleksandr Usyk just because he can. 500 grand, what's that to Canelo Alvarez, huh? It's a hell of a lot to people like you and me, but to Canelo Alvarez, it's just like, let me just check my back pocket and just, 500 grand, that'll do. Daniel Dubois said he doesn't give a something about that, but I hope Canelo isn't turned into one of these. Billy Joe Saunders is pretty bad for that. You see, sometimes he would make bizarre bets and he'd nearly always lose. What's the guy's name, Drake, who puts those big bets on and nearly always ends up getting taken to the cleaners? I hope Canelo hasn't jinxed Usyk with this one by betting on him. But it's an interesting one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What were your thoughts on this press conference? Did you enjoy it? Did you get what you... I kind of got what I expected. As I said, you know, it's really not much else to say on it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And until next time, peace.